Part 25. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 244. Kingda said so much that he thought the song would be rebutted or cry, but when he was behind, Yanj simply answered, okay. She didn't trust the Shangqing University with guilt. I don't know that the worsening of His Royal Highness has something to do with me. In this world, if anyone wants His Highness to live well, that person must be me, my Highness, not just personal relationships, but also disputes over the interests of life and death. What she said was clear enough. The most stable relationship in the world is probably the relationship of interests, not to mention the interest of life and death. Thank you very much. Kingda said nothing, and stretched out her hand to Yan Ji. It's hard to walk at night, waiter Song is careful. Yan Song nodded slightly. This matter can be considered to have been exposed. Yan Ji didn't expect the prince's condition would be related to her. This is not the case with previous hosts. Is it possible that she tossed the prince too much? Still, she is too strong, like the inspiring fairy in the book, The Men Who All the Men. This kind of thing, Yan Ji wanted to discuss with the chickens, but when she thought of the yellow storm from the inside out, she silently dismissed the idea. So she spent the night in self-blame. She decided to keep a distance from the prince in the future, and in order to have a long life for that guy, she was determined not to slap him with him. The words were turned over and over again, so that the chicken could not calm down. The chicken has recently disliked chasing dramas and watching movies. It likes singing and is crying with a microphone every day. A man with a bad tone in his throat, oh no, a chicken with a bad tone in his throat. When this guy sings, it is similar to the roar of a lion, and anyone who hears it can be killed by its voice. During the intermission, the chicken drank a cup of throat tea and said to Yanj, "Can't sleep and chat with me for a while. What do you think of my song?" "I think I sang the essence of this song, and I shed tears when I sang." "Hey, it's really tears. This song is so sweet." "Would, I now know that singing is not actually singing. This is actually a call to heart. If you can't sleep, you can come with me." Yan Ji looked at the chicken in a very good mood, so he asked, "My host is so beautiful this time, isn't it a fairy?" The chicken shook his head, "Of course not, a native." "Yanj, have you heard what the youth university said to me today? The worsening of the prince's condition has something to do with me. What do you think is the reason?" She always thought it was not that simple. Yanj rarely had a serious question, and the cub thought seriously, excessive libido, his small body can't bear your words of song. More than once a year, is that called excessive libido? She fell back into silence. The chicken continued, "Since it's so irritating, it's better to have a song with me." Yan's song, "No, I'm going to sleep." She covered her head with a quilt and kept her ears out of the window. Things are changing in North Korea. The emperor recently spoiled Princess Chi, and also loved the 7 princes around Princess Chi. The emperor had a few thoughts on abandoning the prince for the 7th prince. However, he also calculated well, thinking that when the 7th prince was growing up, when the prince was abolished and the 7th prince was established, it would be just to fill the vacancy. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 245. But the emperor wanted to wait, but Princess Chi couldn't wait. After all, the emperor's heart is unpredictable, and no one knows how long her holy pet can last. Concubine Yuki is in the mix, and Chaoyang has been in a state of chaos recently. The various princes framed each other and conspired against each other, and gradually intensified, and 2 princes have been abolished. Among these intrigues, of course, there are also competitions from various parties, but also the emperor's help. After all, the sons are all old, and each has ambition, but he is still strong, and he can sit on the throne for another 50 years. Of course, he does not want his throne to be raised by himself. The wolves were snatched. There is only one throne, but many sons, and he can have them at any time if he wants. Therefore, to deal with those princes with big heart, the emperor would rather kill by mistake than let go. In such a state of panic among the princes, finally the prince could not help but want to rebel. All of this is of course under the control of the emperor, or in other words, it is his indulgence. Those who dare to think of his throne will not let him go. However, in the end everything was out of the control of the emperor. Of his many sons, the most incompetent prince, who had been ignored by him, showed his paws at the last moment. He was taken into the palace with the name of rescue driving, and the grandeur killed him and occupied his throne. Before the death, the emperor was horrified. His relationship with the queen has survived in name only, and this prince is a decoration that can be abolished at any time for him. He let the prince sit in the seat of the East Palace, also because the prince was easily destroyed by him. He never expected that he would be dismissed by a waste one day. The emperor was assassinated and killed, not only had to take the opportunity to clean up the forces, but also to stabilize the situation and let the prince succeed in his ascension. Yanj was busy for more than a month, and the new emperor sat on the throne safely. She was also named a doctor of history because of her great achievements. Almost a step into the sky. If she was an old man, everyone would have no objection, but she was so young that she relied on the relationship between his princes and courtiers and jumped to this official position of Dr. Yushi, secretly, I don't know how many people are jealous. Both eyes were staring at her, about to see her jokes. It can be said that the song is long-sleeved, good at communication, and she has a strong memory. Those officials who have never met before can talk to her, and she can touch each other's preferences and thus have a conversation like a breeze. Just a month after taking office, Yanj completely won the hearts of the people. Today's Song of Songs can be regarded as an official triumph. The only thing that worries her a little is the new emperor. After this guy didn't plan to stand, there wasn't even a woman around. Which emperor can have no children? If this guy hangs up early, the song will surely be another turmoil, and Yan Song sincerely hopes that the new emperor will have a lag before hanging. In this way, she can also grow long in the regent's way. This matter does not need to be mentioned by her, the ministers have already been talking about the memorials in this regard. But the new emperor responded to all these memorials with the words laboring the people and hurting their wealth. If there is a minister in the court, the new emperor directly said, there is no silver treasury after the election of the consort. If you worry about the country and the people, you should come out of the silver. So the courtiers ceased. After all, this is not a small sum of money, and they cannot afford it even if they are sold. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 246. Yanj is a lazy tree. She actually hates busy days. But in this plane, there is really no way to be lazy. She is busy every day and has been laying the foundation for her future power. The goal of Yanj is not only Song Dynasty, but she also wants to include Su Guo in the net. After all, the host's desires are a bit general, probably because they can't beat those men, so they want to play with men in applause. Yan Ji never thought of playing with men with her body. After all, while she regarded men as playthings, men were actually treating her as playthings. Rather than being a plaything, it is better to control the rights that men care about the most and to step men under their feet. Because of being too busy, Yan Ji has not been alone with the new emperor for a long time in private except in the chapel. Probably not only had King Da warned her that day, Wen Lao must have warned the new emperor too, so that even now, the new emperor has never thought about interacting with her again. This is actually very good, the rite is actually much easier than the contest between getting up. The only thing that bothers Yanj is from time to time, always trying to test the General Wu who speaks the bottom line. Since this time seeking power to usurp General Wu also contributed a lot, Yanj still has a little tolerance for this guy. But tolerance is limited. Yanj didn't want this guy to become an abyss between her and the new emperor. Therefore, when General Wu Wei came to visit again, Yanj finally stopped evading with his excuse. Instead, a tea banquet hosted the guy. To come to her all day, there must be too much energy to do nothing, she needs to find something for this guy. The eldest husband stands in the heavens and the earth, and when his meritorious deeds became famous, the general never thought of going any further. General Wu Wei didn't say anything, just looked at the words in a puzzle. The great song is now Kuotai Minan. Although there is no place for generals to use it, I heard that Su's internal affairs are chaotic today, the people are not talking about life, and the general, this is also an opportunity for you. General Wu Wei understood the meaning of Yanj after knowing it. He looked at Yanj in amazement. Your Majesty, has the meaning of cutting off Su. Yanj shook his head. Since peace is in danger, the Song dynasty is now Kuotai and Minan. Although cultivation are beneficial to people's livelihood, we must also plan for future things. Her answer was specious. General Wu Wei came from a village in Yujia to this day. He was not a confused person, so he immediately felt that the new emperor was ambitious, but he was afraid that the ministers would obstruct him, so he never showed his heart. Only mentioned the confidant of Yanj. Thinking of Yanj's identity, General Wu Wei's dignified expression was a little darker. He squeezed his fingers and asked her, "What are you going to do now?" She is a woman, and she can never stand on the chapel. After the new emperor is established, she will accept concubines, and there will be countless beauties in the harem. But what about her? What will she do then? She will have to marry and have children, and she will have to return to her daughter. Can't she do it for such a lifetime? He looked at her, his voice was low, restrained and said, "You are so intelligent, you should know that this is not the way you should go, you cannot always go on like this." Yanj still smiled, but her eyebrows gradually condensed, and her smile didn't reach the bottom of her eyes. "General, I don't need to mention this again in the future." General Wu Wei still had to speak, but Yan Ji reached out his hand and knocked the teacup on his hands to the ground. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 247. Yan Song looked faint and looked at him and said, "The general is a man with great achievements, so he should know what it means to overwhelm the water. When a child is young, he is abandoned and betrayed by those close to him. The monk now believes that he lives much better than before. If the general cares about the sun, please respect the sun." He opened his mouth and looked at her with such indifferent expression. In the end, only one sentence, "I hope you have a good life." "Thank you," Yanj said, "I'll make myself well." Having said this, he thought that this guy should not be able to stay anymore, but he never thought that General Wu Wei would have no intention to leave. He still stared at her with burning eyes. Yan Ji didn't do bad things, and of course she wouldn't hide from his eyes, so she looked at him frankly. "It's hard to walk at night, why don't the carriage in my house send the general?" General Wu Wei frowned slightly. The fingers under his table were pinched tightly and released, and the redness at his ears spread a little bit, his eyes flashed gradually, his throat rolled, his voice said dumbly, "I meet the adult as always, want to sleep with adults." Born in a rural place, and because he has been fighting on the battlefield, General Wu Wei is different from his brother, Tan Hualang, and he has never been a Sven. From the day he knew Yanj's identity, he kept talking about it. Stung for a long time. Of course, the words tolerating and sleeping were not something he could say himself. This was what he asked from his staff. He has been wandering outside the gate of the Song of Songs these days, and has been reciting the sentence in his heart. At this moment, he was finally able to speak out. He seemed like he had a wish, and his heart briskly. He looked at her. Although his ears were red, his eyes became brighter and brighter. He continued to add, "Master Song, we are all men, lie together, presumably you wouldn't mind, I'm from the countryside, many officials I do understand everything, so I want to talk to an adult tonight for advice. Chicken, he wants to sleep with you. Is this nonsense?" The words are expressionless. There are 10,000 grass and mud horses flying around in my heart. Knowing that she is the new emperor's woman, this man even dared to please him. Is this not to pay attention to the new emperor or to her? Chicken, the new emperor is not good anyway. You might as well put a few green hats on the new emperor, and the host will be more satisfied. This suggestion is actually very relevant. But Yanj can't do such a thing. Yan Ji didn't answer. General Wu Wei thought he was hesitating. He immediately said, "Someone around me looks like me, so I can disguise and leave first." This man, this is not a temporary intention, it is clearly prepared. Yan Ji shrank his face, "Okay." She didn't wait for General Wu Wei to respond, and immediately shouted, "Come." General Wu Wei's face was so happy that he almost laughed out his teeth. Although he is burly, the facial features are handsome and martial, and with such a smile, he can only see the silly and sweet illusion from his face. Yan Ji didn't look at him. She pointed at General Wu Wei and said to her descendants, "General Wu Wei is resting in his house tonight, and you take him to the west room next to my study." After that, she ignored the people's surprised eyes, she turned to General Wu Wei and said, "I have to deal with some things in the study, you can wash first." General Wu Wei was so excited that he was almost 3 feet tall now. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 248. The mighty general of Le Tien is eager to hold the words and kiss him. But he put up, after all, there was a subordinate present. Although he was going to die happily, he calmly said to her, "Well, good." Yanj waved to the people, "Go, don't neglect the general." The subordinate's gesture to Yanj was finally determined, and his eyes were surprised and busy, and he made a pleas to General Wu Wei. General Wu Wei walked to the door with joy, remembering what it was like, turned his head to ask the song, and said vaguely, "My lord, would you pretend to leave?" Yanj said immediately, "I will let the people in the government also arrange accommodation for the generals. The generals need not worry." General Wu Wei thought that the words should understand what he meant. Could it be that she was implying that the emperor had completely ignored her every move? When General Wu Wei went out, he looked up and his chest was full of spirits, just like with a big tail. Yanj waited until the door was closed, the smile on his face gradually narrowed, and his expression gradually became expressionless. "Chicken, do you really want to sleep with him?" Yan Ji asked, "Is this mighty general, mighty?" The chicken is silent, which is the best answer. The chicken was silent for 3 seconds and immediately said, "Actually, I have a brilliant idea." His voice was still faint and excited, "You sleep the mighty one, this time he begs you, and you let him get what he wants, maybe he will be successful." Yanj was a little skeptical that the cub's suggestion was actually to make her cuckold the new emperor. The so-called love robbery, where is so easy? Although the identity of the mighty one in the plain is still with luck, it is obvious that there are more and more disputes. Just like this time, without her, the mighty one would have to ask the host for one life. The identity and circumstances of the mighty man this time are obviously for the sake of love. Everything has a spirit, not to mention the heavenly rule over everything. Yanj doesn't think that the identity of a mighty person is random every time. Even this time, she slept with him and let him get what he wanted, and she didn't think that the mighty would be successful. The chick blew a throat, "I have never regretted sleeping in my life, I only wish to sleep for a lifetime." Don't sing. Yan Ji's thoughts were interrupted, anxiously pulling the guy's hair out, "Shut up." The cock's voice rose and dried up, "You have no heart, but you are also ruthless. I am wounded by your body, but I still want to make you feel better." Yan Song went to the study discouragedly. Less than a moment in the study, a decree came to the palace, telling her to enter the palace. Words of song. Fortunately, she didn't sleep, otherwise it might not have been a decree. The new emperor was a man who didn't like to use his mind. After the court was stable, he distributed all the affairs to the courtiers, and he was keeping his own bones most of the time. Yanj entered the palace overnight. The new emperor was leaning on the soft collapse and listening to the attendants reading the memorial. Seeing Yanj entering the palace, he pointed at Yanj lazily and said, "I haven't heard Zijun's voice for a long time. Come." Yanj took the memorial from the waiter in good hands. "It is the honor of Zijun to be remembered by His Majesty." The people in the palace resigned and bowed down. The hall was full of popularity, and it was empty for a moment. Except for the flickering of candlelight, it is the pearl-like sound of Yanj. Guess what the new emperor is going to do? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 249. The new emperor squinted his eyes. Only when a song was completed and Yanj asked him for his opinion, he would give a few words. Later, he simply asked what he thought of Yanj, and after Yanj gave his opinion, he was end with a meh. Had it not been for the new emperor, Yanji felt that he might have thought that the emperor had simply declared her into the palace to read the memorial for him. A seal memorial went from the left-hand side to the right-hand side of Yanj, and the candlelight in the hall also swayed even more as the wick grew. The palace people have retreated, and Yanj can't call for the palace people to call in again. So letting go of her memorial, she tentatively said to the new emperor, "Your Majesty, the candle wick is a bit long. I call the palace person to come in." The new emperor squinted and said, "You go." Yanj obediently cut the lights. Also after Yanj left him, Zindi opened his eyes and stared at Yanj's silhouette. Rather than being cuckolded, it is better to stifle it in the cradle. Kill. Still not killing? He squeezed his lips tightly, his eyes were like staring at the prey, staring at the back of Yan Song. The eyes behind him were scorching like fire, nowhere could Yan Ji feel it. She pretended that she didn't notice anything, and the gossip smiled to the new emperor and said, "Your Majesty, are you tired?" Before waiting for the new emperor to speak, she said, "I have something funny to tell Her Majesty, does Your Majesty want to hear?" The new emperor didn't wait for the song to say the next sentence, but he was also curious, and narrowed his eyes to see her, huh. Yanj then seemed to have permission, and continued with a smile, "General Wu Wei came to our house today. The guy has a bad heart. He probably thinks that his minister is his lord's favorite, so he wants to win him, and he cheats him into the study. In the dungeon next to him, the old man who took care of the yard raised a lot of mice in the dungeon, and now General Wu Wei has a lot of fun." Zindi, huh. Little Wuju in the belly of General Wu Wei, when he didn't know. Whatever he wanted to win over her, he just wanted to cuckold the emperor. As today's dating, the new emperor feels that he should also move his muscles and get rid of the obscure guy like General Wu Wei. Yanj went on to say, "People like General Wu Wei, His Majesty gave him Lulu to let him go to battle to kill the enemy, but he did not let him freely care for the elderly in the capital, Your Majesty, or else, let us find something to do for him." How does this tone sound like it's a secret idea to give people a bad idea? Zindi raised an eyebrow, "What? This woman, is she trying to protect that person?" However, he liked to listen to it. "Your Majesty, I heard that Suguo's internal worries are constantly increasing. If a country has internal worries, there must be external troubles. Why not let General Wu Wei be the external troubles of Suguo? This, bad idea. Xindi really likes it tightly. Keeping that guy far away, she can only think about her, but she can't even look at it. The most important thing is that she hates him so much, but she still has to swallow the world for him. The emperor's lips are raised, he can fall asleep on the woman he loves and enjoy the world he lays down. Alas, it's cool to think about it. The new emperor resisted the urge to clap his hands and looked at the song with a serious face. It takes money, needs a reason, and the unanimous approval of the ministers. How can it be taken for granted? As soon as Yan Ji heard these words, there was a drama, and he patted his chest immediately. Your Majesty, leave such a trivial matter to the minister. The new emperor's eyes fell from Yan's face to Yan's chest. Her small were by her all these days, and even more undulating. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 250. New Emperor Chao Yanj beckoned, come here. Xian Emperor's hot-spoken words were tense, and when she heard Xian Emperor's words, her legs and stomach became soft. The person who achieved the big event is informal, and seeing that the big event is approaching, the two people should come together to discuss the matter of the court. Why is he now distorted? Yanj tilted his head, and looked at the new emperor with a doubt and anxiety. Your Majesty, everyone else is more confused, but Lord Taifu is not easy to talk about, and Lord Taifu has a lot of people, so there is no good excuse. Xindi, killed. Song. Ashamed. Partial new emperor was not led by the topic of Yanj, and impatiently continued waving to Yanj, come here. Yanj could only come forward with a scrutiny, Your Majesty. Although he arrived at the couch, he stood at the foot of the new emperor. Xindi frowned, come here. Yanj moved his steps, and was still 2 feet away from his hand. What is your command? The new emperor endured to the limit, sat up and held Yanj's clothes, and pulled Yanj on his couch in the surprise of Yanj. He reached out and rubbed Yanj's chest, humming coldly, look at your chest uncomfortable, rub it for you. Words of song. The chicken rolled his eyes, it's he say, what is there to rub? There is too little knowledge of the defective products, probably I haven't experienced the magnificence, so the monkey urgency seems really small. Song. How do you think this guy is hurting her by turning? Of course, it is not easy to rub across the cloth strips. The new emperor went to explain Yanj's clothes, and Yanj was busy holding his hand. Your Majesty, Yanj swears that he will never slap with this guy until he has no offspring. The atmosphere now needs to continue, and the result is self-evident. Xindi raised his brow, and the dangerous light in his eyes flashed. Why, still thinking about the General Wu Wei in your house? This hat will fall into a big hair. Yan Ji immediately shook his head. No, I'm a rough-looking man, I. Xindi's hand touched her eyebrows. Bath with you. Words of song. It's really fun to play in the water, but when you enter the water together, nothing happens at all. Yan Ji bowed his head. Your Majesty, my shui is coming soon. Before she could finish speaking, the new emperor pinched her chin, which forced her to look up and stare at him. Is Kishui just passed? His voice suddenly became cold. Maybe there are too many heads in the house, and I'm disdainful. Yanj hugged him abruptly. Your Majesty, you have wronged me. She looked up, tears in her eyelashes, and if it wasn't for a man's makeup, it would have been pitiful. The new emperor pursed his lips, got up and walked outwards. Seeing that Song of Song was still sitting on the couch, the pair looked pitiful but hateful. He rubbed his teeth. Follow me. Oh, good Majesty. Yan Ji suddenly stayed behind Xindi. How to do? Now that the prince has become the emperor, she would not be able to carry this pot if she slept to death. Her goal is the sea of stars, and she must not be mistaken for the sake of being male. Out of the hall, went to the Heshun hall where the emperor often stayed. There is an extremely large bath in the side of the hall. The bath is hot, and the petals are covered with a layer on the water surface. As soon as the new emperor waved his hands, the palace people in the palace rushed out. He turned his head and raised his chin slightly to Yan Ji, and raised his hands. This is to sing songs to help him undress. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 251. Yan Ji has waited for him for so long, but he still has a sense of enthusiasm. He rushes forward to wait for him to undress. After entering the water, I saw Yanj still kneeling beside the pool. The new emperor hummed unpleasantly, "Come in and wash your face." Words of song. This need is very clear. Still have to find a way to get this guy to marry a concubine. Even if he can only have a year, there can be a vent. Yan Ji slowly took off his clothes and washed his face in the bath before looking to the new emperor. The new emperor froze her with a cold face. This kind of thing, since Yanj can't hide, I think it's better to say clearly. As she approached the new emperor, she said, "Your Majesty, you will get sick every time you are with me. Without me, you are in good health. I am so close to you now, and my heart is really scared." Xian Emperor's eyes suddenly turned sharp. I don't know if it is the illusion of words, but he saw some crumbs in his eyes. "Your Majesty, is there something wrong with my body? If you are really uncomfortable, if you do not look for other women." Before the words were finished, Zindi suddenly approached her and kissed her lips. His eyes were smoky with water vapor, and his wetness seemed to be stained by countless affections. His kisses were lingering, his hands were ringing with songs, and the tenderness of his lips and teeth was like wrapped in invisible water weeds. On the body, the two became tighter and tighter. I wanted to try it, but he couldn't let it go at the touch of a touch. He simply went deeper and deeper into the softness. Yanj realized the emperor's intention, and hurriedly pushed his hand. "Your Majesty, no, if I suffer you from my illness because of my fault, I will not be at ease in my life." The tenderness was interrupted, and his eyes faded from the water vapor, making it deeper and deeper. "Because of you," he chewed the words in his mouth, his eyes flashing, and he smiled at her with an unknown meaning. "Do you really know why?" He touched her eyes with his fingers, covering her eyes that were confused and looking at him, and only at this moment, there was a bit of hatred through his eyes. But his voice was still soft. "Jun Jun, you look so beautiful, every time I see you, I can't wait to put your face next to you, Capricorn." Song. This degree of abnormality, and the chickens have a fight. "Your Majesty, you once said that beauty is in bones and not skins. So you do nt want to hit me with this idea?" The emperor's fingers slowly touched the features of Yanj and touched her blown skin. Jun, but now you also like your skin." "I like the bones first and then the skin without any problems." "Your Majesty, why do you get sick every time you get close to Jun? Yan Ji still remembers what the emperor said just now. What makes her really wonder why? Hardly, there is really a deeper reason for this. Does this guy have a vest? Because you're a spirit that can people's spirits. He grabbed her waist and slowly put the body up. "Such a beautiful beauty, sooner or later, I will die on you." Yan Song. When the car came to the mountain, how to refuse? "Your Majesty, for your health, you." Before she finished speaking, she was blocked by the emperor. The hot air was scattered in the bath, and it was full of warmth at room temperature. The bodies of the two in the water vapor were entangled, like a fish in the water. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 252. After staying, the groaning gradually began. Seeing each other without conquest and suppression this time, weaving tender feelings in each other and sinking in each other's tender feelings, seemingly unable to sleep. The gentleness is like a gentle breeze and drizzle. The moisturizer is silent, but it is also pleasing to the body and mind. This time, Yanj didn't ask for too much, and didn't toss too much. Although the emperor was a little breathless afterwards, she looked at it, and this guy didn't seem to be sick. She was very embarrassed in her heart, and although she obediently nestled in the emperor's arms, she never fell asleep. The emperor squinted and rested for a while, probably a little bit more energy. He put his hand on her and asked her, "Why did you want to attack Suguo?" What this said was that she wanted to attack, and she was clearly trying to help him to make up for it. She pinched his forehead on his chest. "Your Majesty wants to fight?" "Your Majesty wants to fight, and Junjun plans for His Majesty, and Junjun listens to His Majesty." He wondered a little bit, and really couldn't arrange that nail if he didn't hit. He didn't kill that guy, he knew it. Yan Ji was relieved. Fortunately, this guy also knew that the overall situation is the most important thing. Even if he didn't seem to like General Wu Wei, he didn't state that he would hide General Wu Wei in death. Looking up, she pecked the emperor's chin. She asked softly, "Your Majesty, how are you feeling?" "It sucked you up, not so much." Words of song. Sincerely, Yanj didn't know what to do for a while. Fortunately, the emperor continued to say, "Don't worry, it won't die at 1:30. Yan Ji heard this and was even more worried. She thought she had a hard night, but then she fell asleep strangely. Until the next day, when I was awake, I realized that there was a bright yellow in front of me, and Yanj was sober. She's in the palace now, and the sun is going to fart/share. What should I do early?" And General Wu Wei was also held in her dungeon. Probably heard the sound between the bed mantle. The palace people rushed in, helping Yanj change clothes and wash. These people probably got the order. They were silent, they just did things and didn't talk. The clothes sent by the palace people were gorgeous women's clothes. The official robe belonging to her had gone somewhere. Yanj guessed that this was the order of the emperor. Although he was still anxious about the former dynasty, he also slowly settled down. Anyway, the emperor was involved in the big things. The only pitiful one is General Wu Wei, who originally thought about letting him off overnight, and now it seems to be more closed sometime. Yan Ji helped her to comb her buns, left and right, boring, and simply looked at the books on the couch, and wanted to come to the books often read by the emperor. These books are thick, the covers are tall and large, and the titles have not been written. The books that I thought could be read by the emperor at any time are also some of the ways of governing the country or the ministers, and some hard to find lonely books. As a result, I opened the first book. My neighbor is widow. Yan Ji thought she had read it wrong, but after watching the beginning, middle, and end, she was silent. Silently put down this whole book which is full of YY Poppy. Yan Song opened another book, and as a result, the name in this book is The Female Ghost I Have Met in Those Years as a Priest. This book seems a bit connotative. Yan Song turned a few pages, and was silent again, and the sleeping man was nothing more, this full-featured sleeping girl ghost. Opening another book, it is Life of the Dad of the Demon God. Dad raises lowly and eats it, the taste of Numa is heavy. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 253. These books are all idiom books, and they are still the kind of meaty/Marvin that men like to read. The emperor's preferences were really beyond words. In order to understand the emperor's special hobbies, Yanj endured the impulse to poke the blind eyes and turn these books over and over. She noticed that although these books have various names and different writings, they basically have the same meaning, that is, a hanging silk walks on the road of the peak of life, then meets various beauties and then various pops, and finally enjoy life with a bunch of beautiful people. Arguably, the emperor already exists as the pinnacle of life's pinnacle. As long as he wants beauty, what kind of thing can he not? Why does he like to read such words? Of course, it is also possible that the emperor could not sleep a bunch of beauties. After all, sleeping a bit is a bit laborious, and there is not enough energy to sleep, you can only read the book to YY. The emperor's impression in the words of the song instantly changed from a mysterious man to a childish hanging silk. The emperor went to breakfast with Yanj in the early dynasty. After breakfast, two people nested in the house. I haven't seen Yanj women's clothing for a long time, and the emperor hasn't felt fresh yet. After seeing a few books on the couch, he changed his face and asked the palace people to put them away. Yanj pretended to be curious and asked, "What book does your majesty read?" "Some travel notes," the emperor said. "I stay in this capital all day, I don't know what kind of world is outside, I can only watch some travel notes to pass the time." Junjun also likes to read books in this area, but only too few can be found. "Your Majesty, should you lend me some books?" Upon hearing the words, the emperor looked up at Yanj, and half a moment suddenly smiled. "You have read all these books." He reached out and squeezed the words on the cheek. "Can you still want to see how embarrassed you are?" Yanji followed with a smile, with a cunning expression in his eyebrows. "Yeah, unfortunately, your Majesty is not fooled." The beauty was right in front of her, and the hand talk was actually meaningless. The emperor stopped playing after a round, and said, "Go, let me take you to this palace." "It's not true, either." The two sat on the shoulders of the canopy, and the emperor held the words in his arms. Yanj really sits like a needle and felt like a man. She thought she could throw the emperor and streets, but now it's useless. Because she was afraid that the emperor could not help it. She was really afraid that the emperor would be dead to her by the beauty. Yanj shifts the subject as much as possible, such as the drought in the north, the floods in the south, and the corruption case in the west. However, none of these can make the emperor look away. The words were really helpless, and they could only hold the emperor's sleeve weakly to protest, "Your Majesty, don't continue anymore." "Emperor," after Suguo lays down, "stand up for you." Although it sounded like a consultative tone, the song felt that if she protested at this time, maybe this guy would immediately push her down the shoulders. Yanji said with some worry, "Your Majesty, my identity." "It doesn't matter," the emperor said. "At that time, I will arrange for you the status of a minister's daughter. You can rest assured that when you enter the palace, you will not be wronged. You are used to beauty like you. Other women, disdain." When he said this, he looked at Yanj with a look of affection in his face, and his fingers traced his eyebrows. Yanj also disdained the position of the queen. After all, the emperor's small body, once a year, can go to half-life. She marries such a guy and can't figure out anything.